all, I ask unanimous consent to submit additional material for the remarks on my first comments.
Without objection.
In recent months, a lot of attention is focused on the nation's inspectors general. It seems like a good idea to take a few minutes now, to remember what inspector generals are, why Congress created them in the first place, and how we got here. Congress first established offices of inspectors general in 1978, quote, to create independent and objective units in the federal government to do three things: conduct audits and investigations, 2, promote efficiency and deter fraud and abuse, and 3, keep agency heads and Congress fully informed about the problems that IGs find. In short, Congress designed inspector generals to shine a bright light on waste, fraud, and abuse throughout the federal bureaucracy, with hope that the executive and legislative branches could work together to do something about those problems. So, IGs are then the original swamp drainers, and an equal important point for those who weren't around at the time that was created, the support for creating these offices was breathtakingly bipartisan. The vote in the House of Representatives, where I was then a member, was 388 to 6. Now, more than 40 years later, we have 75 offices of Inspector General working to stop fraud and abuse. Their actions also saved the taxpayers billions of dollars. In 2020 so far, IGs have identified more than $20 billion in potential savings through their audits, reports, and recommendations. $20 billion, and this year is not even half over. On oversight.gov, you can find the latest figures on these watchdogs' contributions, as well as investigative and audit reports on every kind of topic you can think of. IGs have found everything from blatant government employee misconduct to procurement fraud, and of course, much more. It's all there in black and white, in the public domain for all to see. These Inspector General are helping Congress watch over the people's business and ensure the fidelity of agency action. We in Congress cannot perform our constitutional mandates of oversight without IGs. The IG's work makes government more transparent and more accountable, and that strengthens the public trust in our democracy. That's a good thing for Congress and a good thing for the presidency. In this way, these watchdogs serve an indispensable function in our system of checks and balances. So what makes a good Inspector General? If I've learned anything about oversight, it's that this type of work is not for the faint-hearted or the thin-skinned or the thick-headed. You need a strong code of professionalism to withstand pressures to go along to get along. You need a real backbone to wring wrongdoing from the bowels of the bureaucracy. And you need a quick wit to look on smiling faces and discern truths from half-truths and bald-faced lies. And the law says that IGs are supposed to be objective and independent. They have to be fierce watchdogs, not lapdogs. They can't bow to personal agenda or political machinations, and they shouldn't be subject to inappropriate political pressure from any quarter whatsoever. When IGs are working hard, staying independent, and shining the light on waste, fraud, and abuse, they should stay. But when they don't put in the work, when they pull the punches, and when they became political hacks, or when they compromise their vital independence, then IGs must go. For many years, I've investigated and held IGs accountable from both Democrat and Republican administrations for these very failures. In 2003, I pushed Health and Human Services IG to resign over whistleblower complaints about poor staff management. I also investigated allegations of poor work product, coercive management decisions, and questionable hiring practices by the watchdog at the Federal Housing Finance Agency. Just last year, I began pushing hard to get to the bottom of whistleblower complaints about another apparently ineffective Commerce IG, although the media at that time doesn't seem to care about that, despite bipartisan concerns and briefings from my staff. Alternatively, when IGs come under fire for doing good work, this senator has their backs. In 2009, I shined a light on a sudden departure of the Amtrak IG, who signed a gag order in exchange for significant payout. When the Obama administration blocked a broad swath of IG community from assessing records needed for oversight, I worked across the aisle and introduced and finally passed the Inspector General's Empowerment Act in 2016. In short, I've gone to the mat my whole career to ensure inspectors general do and are able to accomplish their work with support, independence, and integrity. And because this work is so critical to Congress and our oversight role and to the public trust, I've worked hard to ensure that any effort to remove an IG is for a darn good reason. That's what Congress required in the IG Reform Act of 2008, a law that then Senator Obama not only voted for, but he co-sponsored. That law recognizes two things. First, it is the president's constitutional prerogative to manage the executive branch personnel. The president can fire an IG. Second, it is Congress's intent in that law to support IG independence and maintain public trust. IGs then should not be removed for blatant political reasons. This requires that presidents tell Congress and the people their reasons for removal of an IG. The IG Reform Act codified those principles by requiring the president to submit to Congress a notice of intent to remove an IG 30 days in advance and to explain why. Now, the executive branch, under two successive presidencies of both political parties, has sought to ignore the law and keep Congress in the dark. Both presidents provided Congress then with paltry excuses of quote-unquote lost confidence. In July of 2009, less than a year after Congress passed the IG Reform Act, then President Obama removed the Corporation for National and Community Services Inspector General, Gerald Walpin, from his post and placed him on administrative leave. Obama's White House informed Congress merely that President Obama had lost confidence in Mr. Walpin. My colleagues and I made it very clear that a vague reference to loss of confidence was insufficient and did not satisfy the requirements of the very law that President Obama voted for and co-sponsored when he was a senator. This then began a bout of negotiations that resulted in the hold of presidential nominees and eventually a bicameral congressional investigation. In that case, I pushed for compliance with the statute, held up a nominees to obtain information, and disagreed with the stated reason for Mr. Walpin's removal. Now, Mr. Walpin was never reinstated. In Mr. Walpin's case in the federal courts, that court found later, despite a clear congressional record To the contrary, the law doesn't require more than what President Obama gave us, any other greater detail beyond its quote-unquote minimal statutory mandate to justify the removal of Mr. Walton. Now fast forward to the last several months, when the current president followed the court's incorrect ruling and the Obama precedent by removing 2 Senate-confirmed IGs, placing them on administrative leave, and telling Congress only, as Obama once did before, that he had lost confidence in them. In response, I did exactly what I had done before in the Obama administration. I and several colleagues wrote asking for a better explanation. When we finally got a response from the White House counsel, we were left without substantive reasons for the IG's removal. So, like before, I notified the majority leader of my intent to object to the 2 administrative nominees until the White House coughed up some form of rationale for the removal. I finally got those reasons this week. I don't agree with all of them, and I'm working to better understand others, but because the President has finally fulfilled the law, both Congress and the public can look and see for themselves what happened. This, of course, was the intent of the law all along. We took the long road to get here, and we could have avoided all this hullabaloo if both Presidents Obama and Trump had just followed the statutory notice requirements in the first place, but we're here. These episodes have convinced me that the executive branch, regardless of what party is in charge, just doesn't get it. From one administration to the next, Democrat or Republican, it makes no difference to me. This isn't about politics. It's about the separation of powers, checks and balances, public trust. It's clear that Congress can't rely on any White House to get it right. So we need to change the law. We need to be clearer, and we need to be better safeguard the independence of these IGs. That's why I've been developing bipartisan reforms to sharpen the independent authority and recruitment of those hired and confirmed to serve as inspectors general. We're not going to enact a clearly unconstitutional law that fringes on the president's authority to manage personnel, and that would surely result in lengthy court battles. But we're going to clarify once and for all that the law's notice requirement means that presidents have to give clear, substantive reasons for removing an IG, and that they can't put an IG on administrative leave without a good reason. To fully safeguard statutorily required IG independence, we're also going to make sure that the president cannot place political appointees with clear conflicts of interest into acting IG roles. And we can't have individuals with political day jobs simultaneously in charge of confidential, independent IG matters, including substantive and sensitive audits, investigative work, and whistleblower information. Today, I've introduced that legislation with my colleagues, Senators Peters, Collins, Feinstein, Langford, Carper, Romney, Tester, Portman, and Hassan. I want to thank Ranking Member Peter for working with me on this, and his input has been insightful in crafting this bipartisan legislation, and his staff and has been diligent in furthering these efforts. Whether you've been following the important work of inspectors generals for many years, or you've just tuned in for the last few, we welcome your support. I hope that support continues well past the current administration. If we don't update the law, we can only expect future administrations to to continue to do what's been done lately, not giving Congress good reasons.